Hey there, hello and welcome once again. My name is Paul Nolan for Beatport and Make Your Transition. We're back once again with another tutorial to help take your productions up to the next level. Today we're going into the world of Psytrance with Function Loop's Psytrance Studio tools. So if you're a Psytrance producer or curious about how to make this genre of music, then stay tuned because we're going to feature this Beatport Sounds exclusive pack to make a Psytrance production from scratch. Okay, so here we are in Ableton Live 10 and I'm using the Function Loops Psytrance Essentials pack. So let's have a little listen to what I've created with this pack and break it down bit by bit. So yeah, nice, real driving Psytrance track here. So let's start with the drums. So I've got quite a few layers to go through here. So let's listen to the drums in isolation and go through them layer by layer. So yeah, you can hear quite a lot going on here, and it starts obviously with the kick. So I've just got a kick sample here, single kick sample, and you can see there's a couple of bits of EQ going on here just to round off 20, just to make room for the bass. And also I've put a secondary EQ8 in here as just a general purpose high pass filter to roll off bass when the time is right. So nothing too fancy going on. Got it in one shot mode to make sure it plays the whole of the kick sample so we get all of the low end through. And yeah, pretty much that's that. So let's move on to hi-hats. So I've got a few different layers of hi-hats going on here. In fact, I've got 4 all in all. And we're going to start by looking at this open hi-hat. And you can see this little pattern here. We've got this little ghost note rolling on here just before the first hi-hat of each bar. So let's have a listen to that. So yeah, a lot of Psytrance records and records at this BPM tend not to use grooves too much and tend not to really have too much in the way of syncopation or swing. So this is a nice way of adding a little bit of rhythmic variation and getting a little bit of rhythm and a bit of groove, if you will, into it. From there, we've got a nice simple closed hat, which again is from the pack. Just ticks over nicely. Then to add on top of that is another layer. I have a 16th note here just triggered, and what you'll see here is I've got very, very, very fine changes to the velocity here, where I've just essentially played that in with a push controller. So again, it's very, very gradual, and it's just, you know, me playing on the push controller with the repeat function. Again, there's only maybe 3 or 4 in it in terms of the velocity numbers. So yeah, it just gives you that little bit of rhythm and a little bit of variation. Then open hat, and again, you can see that's a little bit more pronounced here. And again, this is a bit more of a 909 style open hat. You can see I'm using Kickstart here from Nicky Romero just to give a bit of automatic sidechain. Just gives the tracks a little bit of bounce. And again, all 4 hi-hat layers work well together, played like this. Just adding a lot of pace to proceedings. Then we have our snare, which happens on the 2 and the 4. And you can just hear there, just add a little bit of length by having the simpler here in classic mode rather than one shot. So it means I can play quite short snares through the loop and then quite a long one to finish off to give it a little bit of variation again. So it's all these small little tricks that really come together with this type of dance music production. So to finish off, I've got a couple more of what you would call ethnic or cinematic loops. Again, if you go into the drum loops folders here in the pack, you actually have cinematic drums, percussion loops, within music loops, you have these ethnic music loops as well. So we've sourced a couple here. Now this first one here, as you can see, I've cut up quite a lot using clip volume envelopes. So what I wanted to focus on here, because if I play the loop fully to you without any of these edits in, you'll hear what I mean. So you can hear there's quite a lot of really transient drum sounds in there, quite attacky, quite percussive, and you know, great if that's what you're looking for. But for me, I was looking for something to just fill the gaps in the groove. Wanted something a little more subtle, a little bit more rolling. So I've cut out a lot of these more big and aggressive style of drum hits and with a little bit of a roll at the end. So let's listen to this with the edit on. Like, it sounds like somebody fell over a drum kit on its own, but in context of the rest of the track, just works really, really well to add, again, a large amount of interest and variation into the track. Then finally, we've got this track here, which is more of a cinematic style of drum. This is a bit more like a Hollywood film trailer style of drum, really. So let me just take this reverb send off and we'll listen to this in isolation. So yeah, I mean, brilliant, but just a little bit much in terms of having it roll all the way through the track. So I wanted to use these initial drum hits almost like a fill, like an announcement of the beginning of the next phrase. So again, that could be spread about the finished arrangement and really announce significant changes in the track. So again, it would sound a bit like this. And I'm sending that over to a reverb there in order to just give that extra bit of space and a little bit of extra scale. It's again very, very long reverb, about 17 seconds, high quality, biggest room and stereo field that I can really get my hands on here. And the most important thing is actually rolling off quite a lot of the low end, which means that we don't get any muddiness in the low end and we get that big booming reverb scale. And again, just a little bit of kickstart here just to add a little bit of motion, a little bit of rhythm and a bit of syncopation to the reverb as well, so it doesn't overwhelm the track. It kind of sucks itself into the kick a little. Finally, we've got a crash, and again, it's a nice big long crash sent to a reverb. A nice little filter over the top of it, so that's a nice way of, again, introducing sections, drops, etc. So yeah, there are the drums. So let's move on and have a look at the bass. Okay, so here we are in the bass channel, and one of the great things about the Psytrance Essentials pack here is that you actually get Serum presets. So if we go into Serum here on a MIDI track, you can see that we have a nice selection of presets which I've loaded into the user folder here. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you can go to Menu, Load Preset, and within that folder tree here, you'll actually see where the presets are actually stored on your computer. So you'll be able to do this both on PC and Mac, and then you'll be able to identify where that user folder is, and all you do is drag and drop those presets into the Serum folder, and they're easily accessible for your future workflow. So as you can see here, I've used a bass preset here. It's quite a short, stabby bass. If I was to just play a couple of notes, if I was to just go into my I/O here, all ins. So yeah, very, very short, not a lot to it. But as you saw, as we entered into this part of the video, we've got 16th notes played all the way through as an arpeggio. So it will sound a bit like this. Okay, bit of Nicky Romero kickstart again, just to again make it really sit when the kick hits just on that nice and tight chain preset there. And again, the great thing about having Serum presets is that I can adapt these presets, I can change them. I'll obviously be able to play them at different pitches, but I'll be able to change things like filter cutoffs, and again, be able to completely shape them to whatever I want. Finally, adding a bit of drive here, MS2 mode in the auto filter, just to build up that bass, just to make it sound a little bit more thick and chunky. Really, really cool. So, keeping the bass nice and simple, play it in context with the drums now. So you get the idea. So now we can move on into more musical territory and look at the leads. Okay, now we are in the leads group in the track, and you can see we've actually got 4 other instances of Serum that are all doing slightly different things to bring about a nice overall layer. So this is how the lead sounds. So let's break it down layer by layer. So what we've got going on here is we have in this first layer, if we bring that up on Serum, you can see all of these 4 layers essentially use the same preset, which is available in the pack. This 4-man lead sound here. So let's listen to this first layer. So again, it's got that kind of like higher end, higher pitch kind of sound, and we've rolled everything from 758 up off, so it becomes that higher, more attacky style. And then from here, just a little bump, a little bit of a boost in the top end, again, will be a nice way for us to kind of sit that on top of all the other layers. So if we move on into the second layer here, you can see we've rolled down a little bit less off the bottom end. Our high pass filter is now down towards 280 Hz. And if we add in the second synth here, you can see I'm using the same preset again, but what I'm doing is I'm using a slightly different filter. Whereas the first layer here, our higher layer, used the 4-man 3 filter, I've deliberately changed it in this case to be 4-man 1, so it gives it a slightly different sound. I've also increased the amount of 4-man in this sound to about sort of 2 o'clock, about 67%. So let's have a little listen to that. So you can hear there that it's kind of taken on a bit more of like a vocal kind of sound, which is really, really cool. And the two of them, as you heard towards the end there, sit really well together. Let's look at the third layer here, which is pretty much the main sound in this now. Again, same preset here, 4-man lead, but again, another different style of filter. Here I'm using a band reject. So you can hear there, it's a bit more of a pure, general, sort of more subtractive kind of synth sound. But again, with the modulations happening within this preset and then bringing the width down, it really, really helps it cut through. And again, adding in the other 2 layers. So a really nice, strong, robust sound there. Now, finally, you can see here with our EQ, I've rolled some of the bottom end off. It's the same preset, as you can see, again, exactly the same in every way. I've changed nothing. But here, I've actually started off from B1, whereas every other layer starts at B2. So I'm playing this one an octave down. So let's listen to what this sounds like. So the 4 of them work really well together, and to the untrained ear, sound like one sound essentially. Again, send the entire group to the reverb and a little bit to this echo here with a ping pong delay, just to give it that, again, extra movement, extra sound of complexity, and we're good to go. So again, all three together sound like this: bass, lead, and drums. So there we have it. So let's finish off with some synths and some effects. Okay, so we're in the synths group now, and we've got these two synth stab and more noise-based kind of loop kind of sounds going on. So we'll start again in another instance of Serum, and I'm utilizing this preset here from the pack, the Azura lead, and it sounds a little something like this in isolation. And you can hear it's got this really lovely modulated sound that really adds interest, and again is rhythmical but also got quite a lot of texture, which suits the track really, really well. So what I want to do is, you can see this filter moving around and modulating quite a lot. What would be great is if I could actually utilize the overall cutoff here. You can see me moving it here. You hear quite a lot of extra sound there in the top end, so I'd like to be able to access that, but in real time. So one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to head over to Max for Live. I'm going to grab an LFO Max for Live effect, and I can map that to the cutoff, and you can see that starts going a bit bonkers and starts moving around a lot. So I'm going to put this on a rate of 4 beats. And you can see it goes quite low there. So I'm just going to take the depth down quite a bit, but then offset it. So what we get is that we get mostly high and mid-range. We don't disappear into the low end too much. So it'll now sound a bit like this. So we get a bit more of an interesting sound. So, in context of the rest of the track, especially with the drums, this is how this goes. So yeah, it's really, really motoring now behind the track, adding a lot of interest. Again, bit of kickstart. Again, a little bit of low end rolled off to make room for the bass and for the kick. And yeah, we are in a really nice position now. On top of that, I've got a synth hit, and I'm utilizing that, and I'm pitching that up quite a lot. The root notes of the simpler or any sort of software sampler tends to be C3, middle C on the keyboard. So I'm actually playing this note at F sharp. Now the reason why I'm doing that is because the root note of the synth hit is F. So I actually want to play at the root note of the track, which is B, which means I have to shift it up a few semitones in order to get it to play at B. I know it's a bit confusing, but we just have to kind of get our heads around that a little bit. So it now sounds a bit like this with reverb and delay. So again, to play that with the drums adds a nice aggressive stab sound and keeps the momentum going. So yeah, really, really beautiful. Works really, really well. So to finish off, we have some effects here, and we have this kind of like post riser, almost like an ethnic type of sound. And again, that triggers off every 8 bars or so. As you can see, transposed down 2 semitones. This will give me some really, really nice sort of on-key kind of texture. Makes the whole thing a little bit more musical and a little bit more dramatic. And then finally, I have this 8-bar riser, which as you can see, if I just bring it out of the envelopes view for a second there, you've got 8 bars of essentially just like noise rising up essentially. So what I've done with that envelope that you've just seen is added by holding Option or Alt between 2 automation points, which I've just drawn in here at the top and here at the bottom. You can see the little curved icon there next to the mouse, and it means that I can bend the automation line to make it come in more impactfully over a shorter period of time or a little more gradually. So yeah, it's a really nice way of modulating this, and then this sound in isolation will go a little something like this. So yeah, it's all a little bit like Tron up in here at the moment. So let's listen to the whole thing right the way through to finish off. So this has been the Function Loop Psytrance Essentials pack for Beatport Sounds and MIT. I have been Paul Nolan. Hope you got a lot from that video, and I shall see you in the next one soon.